She stepped into the lobby of Lancaster and Bell, a renowned corporate consulting firm, where she had been invited for a leadership interview. With a folder in one hand and her invitation printed and clipped inside, Tamara walked with measured grace toward the front desk. The office was buzzing. Glass walls framed conference rooms filled with sharply dressed employees. Everything was sleek, chrome, glass, white marble. It was the kind of place that prided itself on prestige, image, and exclusivity. Before she reached the reception desk, a white male intern, early 20s, with light skin, slicked back hair, and dressed in a light gray suit, stepped directly in her path. He smiled, but not kindly. "Ma'am, if you're making deliveries, the service entrance is around back. Just past the loading dock." Tamara blinked. "I'm not delivering anything. I'm here for a scheduled interview." Tamara Carter. The intern's smile widened into a smirk. "Oh. You're the candidate." A receptionist, a white woman in her 30s, sitting behind the polished desk, didn't look up. "No walk-ins today," she said curtly, thumbing through papers. "I'm not a walk-in," Tamara said. She pulled the printed email from her folder and held it out. "I was invited. 10:30 with Martin Long, VP of Business Development." The receptionist finally glanced at her, then at the intern, then back at her again. "We'll, double-check. You can wait outside until we confirm." Tamara stood still. "Excuse me. We'll come get you if the meeting's actually on the books," the intern added, tone condescending. "Lots of folks show up uninvited, claiming they've got interviews." She looked down at the ID badge she was given at the security desk. Her name, printed clearly, was hanging from her blouse. She looked at the printed email again. Everything was right. She had done nothing wrong. But to them, she didn't belong. Behind her, two white male applicants in fitted suits brushed past, greeted warmly, and were immediately guided toward the elevators. No one questioned them. No one asked for confirmation. No one told them to wait outside. Tamara's chest tightened. She had been in boardrooms, pitched to investors, trained executives twice her age. But here she was, dismissed at the door. Judged by the color of her skin and the softness of her skirt, not the strength of her resume. And all she could think was, "If I were anyone else, I'd already be upstairs." She didn't yet know who was about to walk through that door. But when he did, everything would change. Tamara didn't move. Her heels were planted on the marble floor, her breath caught somewhere between her chest and throat. Around her, the lobby moved as if she were invisible, or worse, a disruption. She stood in her burgundy blouse and black pencil skirt, her high braided bun still neat, still proud. But inside, she was unraveling. Not because she was weak, but because the weight of being dismissed again felt all too familiar. A group of new arrivals entered the lobby, 3 white men, all in sleek navy suits, chatting and laughing. One of them nodded at the receptionist and was immediately greeted with a bright smile. "Gentlemen, welcome," she said warmly. "Right this way. Elevators to the left. HR is waiting. No questions. No pause. No suspicion." Tamara watched them go, a slow-burning anger simmering beneath her composed expression. She looked back at the white male intern, who stood beside the desk with his arms folded, still watching her as if daring her to stay. Another moment passed. Finally, the receptionist looked up, glanced toward Tamara, and said flatly, "Like I said, you can wait outside. Someone will come get you, if needed." "If needed?" Tamara repeated, voice quiet, more stunned than loud. "You weren't on the board this morning," the intern added, shrugging. "Probably a mix-up." Tamara pulled out the email again. "This is a scheduled meeting with Martin Long confirmed 3 days ago. My name is on the list with security. I was given a guest badge." Neither of them made eye contact. Behind her, 2 women, junior staffers in pencil skirts, whispered to each other as they walked past. One of them looked over her shoulder, then quickly turned away. That was the worst part. The stares. The ones that weren't angry. The ones that weren't violent. The ones that were silent. People saw her. But they didn't see her. They saw someone who didn't fit the narrative. Not the image of a leader. Not the candidate they expected. And instead of correcting it, they stared. Or ignored. Or left her there to shrink in place. Tamara inhaled deeply, willing herself not to cry, not out of embarrassment, but out of pure exhaustion. She had worked so hard to stand here. She had climbed her way back after layoffs, after being passed over, after being the diversity hire in 3 different companies. And now she was being told, by a smirking intern and an indifferent receptionist, that she didn't belong in the lobby. It wasn't the words. It was the message between them. We don't expect people like you in places like this. She looked at the elevator again. Looked at the name badge on her chest. And something inside her whispered, not fear, not defeat, but resolve. Stay standing. She didn't know that the next footsteps coming through the door would change everything. But they were already on their way. The sound of the revolving doors stirred the air again. Tamara didn't turn immediately, too focused on keeping her composure as she stood there, ignored, belittled, and slowly breaking inside. But then the tone of the room shifted. Footsteps echoed in deliberate rhythm across the marble floor, confident, calm, commanding. The receptionist, who moments earlier barely lifted her head, suddenly straightened in her seat. The white male intern looked up from his phone, his smug expression faltering. Tamara turned, and froze. Walking through the lobby was a tall, broad-shouldered black man in his early 40s, dressed in a charcoal-gray tailored suit, crisp white shirt, and polished black dress shoes. His skin was a deep brown, his posture upright, and his expression unreadable, but focused. Desmond Carter. Her husband. She hadn't known he was coming. He hadn't told her. But the moment she saw him, something inside her settled. Desmond's eyes locked directly on hers. He didn't glance around. He didn't ask for directions. He simply walked to her, like he'd always done when the world tried to crush her dignity. He placed a hand gently on her shoulder and looked at the receptionist. "I'm Desmond Carter," he said, voice even, deep, and quiet enough to make the whole room lean in. "Tamara Carter is my wife." The intern's jaw slackened. The receptionist's mouth opened just slightly, but she couldn't form words. "I believe she was here for a scheduled meeting," Desmond continued. "With your VP, Martin Long." Silence. Tamara looked at the intern, whose smirk had now completely vanished. His eyes darted toward the receptionist, who frantically tapped at her keyboard. "Sir, I didn't know," she stammered. "We thought." Desmond didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. "No," he said, "you assumed." He stepped slightly closer to the desk, but his tone remained calm. "You assumed based on her skin. Based on her hair. Based on her skirt. And you dismissed her. Laughed at her. Sent her to wait outside like she didn't matter. While 2 other men walked right past without question. The lobby had gone completely still. Employees on both floors were now peeking over glass railings. Phones hovered silently. No one dared move. Desmond looked at Tamara again. "You deserve better than this." Then he looked at the receptionist one last time. "And since no one here had the courtesy to tell you." He reached into his jacket and pulled out a company ID, clipped to a sleek leather badge. "CEO, Lancaster and Bell." Gasps rippled through the air like thunder. He turned to his wife. "Come upstairs with me. We have a meeting to run." Tamara blinked, once, then smiled. Not out of revenge. But out of grace. Because in that moment, she realized something far more powerful than a room's respect. She already had it, from herself. Desmond Carter's words didn't echo, they hung in the air like thunder. The CEO. The black man they had overlooked, the woman they had dismissed, they were the leadership now. The power dynamic in the room didn't just shift, it collapsed and rebuilt itself in a matter of seconds. The white male intern backed away slightly from the desk, his face pale, the smirk long gone. The receptionist's hands trembled as she typed into the system, pulling up Tamara's appointment. Exactly where it should have been all along. "Tamara Carter," she said, voice thin and cracking, "confirmed, with Mr. Long at 10:30 a.m. Desmond nodded, not even bothering to respond. The truth was already loud enough. "Get Martin down here," he said. One of the assistants scrambled for the elevator. By now, a quiet crowd had formed in the open concept workspace just beyond the lobby. Employees stood by desks, whispering, glancing nervously through glass partitions. Phones buzzed. People were texting each other. "She's the CEO's wife. She got skirted," and he heard the whole thing. "Heads are gonna roll." Martin Long arrived moments later, breathless and confused. "Desmond, I wasn't aware." Desmond raised a hand. "We'll talk later." He turned to the full staff now, his deep voice cutting through the growing tension. "Everyone in the lobby. Now." It wasn't a request. Within minutes, every intern, receptionist, and junior associate stood together, staring at the man they once thought was a VIP visitor. They now knew he owned the top floor. Desmond didn't yell. He didn't slam his fist. He didn't shame anyone by name. He simply said, "Tamara was dismissed this morning. Not because she didn't belong here, but because she didn't look like she belonged. And that's a problem bigger than any single employee." He paused. Everyone was listening. "I don't care how diverse your policy binder is. If your gatekeepers don't reflect the values inside, your company is a mirror with a cracked frame." The room stayed silent. Tamara stood beside him. Her burgundy blouse radiant in the morning light pouring through the windows. Her high braided bun untouched, her eyes forward, not angry, not smug, but firm. Desmond continued, "Bias doesn't always sound loud. Sometimes it whispers through laughter, or assumptions, or just a look. But it shapes who gets in. And who doesn't." He looked at the intern and receptionist briefly. "You will both be placed on immediate administrative leave while HR conducts a full audit on front desk conduct." No one objected. The employees nodded, some embarrassed, some relieved. Because deep down, many of them had seen things like this before. But this time, it hadn't ended in silence. Tamara and Desmond turned toward the elevator. She didn't gloat. She didn't stare anyone down. She just walked forward. With her head high. Because the fallout wasn't about punishment. It was about change. And it had finally begun. Weeks passed since that morning in the lobby, but the ripples hadn't stopped. Lancaster and Bell underwent immediate changes. The front desk staff was retrained. A third-party audit was launched. Interns now received bias training before they even saw a desk. But the biggest shift wasn't in policy. It was in perspective. Because Tamara Carter hadn't just walked through a lobby that day. She'd walked through a wall that so many women who looked like her had been pushed up against for years. And she didn't stop there. With Desmond's full backing, Tamara launched a new internal program called Gateways, a corporate mentorship and awareness initiative that trained frontline employees to recognize and correct everyday bias. Not just to be better, but to see better. She spoke at the company's next quarterly town hall, standing on the stage in a deep wine-colored blazer, her braided bun elegantly styled, the same calm resolve in her eyes. "I wasn't just skirted," she began, pausing for breath. "I was silenced without a word. Not because anyone said no, but because they never thought to say yes." The room hung on her every syllable. "You see, the most dangerous form of racism isn't loud. It's subtle. It's casual. It hides behind jokes, behind desks, behind eye rolls when we walk into rooms. But the impact? It's just as sharp." She took a moment, then looked directly at the younger staff. "Bias doesn't start in boardrooms. It starts at the entrance. And if you don't fix it there, then everything above it is built on a lie." Applause erupted. Not out of politeness, but because every single person in that room saw what power looked like when it chose to educate instead of humiliate. Desmond stood off to the side, smiling, not because he had defended her, but because she had turned the moment into momentum. From there, gateways spread to other companies. Tamara was invited to speak at panels, universities, and HR conferences. Her story went viral, not just the clip of Desmond announcing who he was, but the quiet grace with which Tamara had reclaimed her space. Her favorite quote was etched onto a plaque placed beside the company entrance just a few months later. "The lobby is the first gate of opportunity. Make sure your gatekeepers aren't guarding it with prejudice. Tamara Carter. Employees passed by it every day. And every time someone looked like they didn't belong, someone else remembered to hold the door open just a little longer. Tamara never wanted the spotlight. But she didn't mind the light either, as long as it illuminated truth. And the truth was this. She had been skirted, mocked, and dismissed. But she never let it define her. Because respect isn't something you wait to be given. It's something you walk in with. And never take off.